one of the really important ideas that I wanted to bring to this session was to look at the cultural entrepreneur, the social entrepreneur, and the business entrepreneurial traits. Some of them are similar, some of them are different. And I feel very strongly that in order to be successful in the current environment, one needs to be selectively taking the traits from each of those three different categories and integrate them and apply them opportunistically. Patrick?
Well, I think, one of the challenges of talking about entrepreneurship is everybody has a certain mythical idea of what an entrepreneur is. And what I try to convey is that the attributes of the entrepreneur are about the same when you come from social entrepreneurship, cultural entrepreneurship, educational entrepreneurship, or business entrepreneurship. The big difference is, one, the fact that in the business world there's a very harsh, simple measure of success, which is money. And that the other entrepreneur have more difficulty because money is very present, but is secondary to the main mission. So they have to deal with that challenge or that tension.
Right.
The second thing which I try to convey is that there are ways of being entrepreneur without taking stupid risk. And that's the discipline of having business plan, and that's the discipline of being structured in the way you're going to test what your idea is, so that you can get early failure in order to lead to success. And that notion of business entrepreneurship, I find, is not quite understood in the other side of the entrepreneurship. So one of the messages I was trying to pass on to this audience, which is board of directors and executive directors, is you have a responsibility to make sure that when you let people do things, they have to have the discipline of promoting what they want in a structured way that you can review, but at the same time, you have to accept failures.
Right now it's qualitative, obviously. One needs a big research. And what I have done is I have interviewed cultural entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, and business entrepreneurs with a set of questions so that I can sort of have a helicopter view what are some of those key traits that make them successful. So that is, I think the other thing that I wanted to I don't know whether that was emphasized enough at this session, is that I think like a decade ago, branding was the silver bullet. It's going to save the museums. And then for the last 10 years or so, everybody's talking about you need to be entrepreneur in order to be successful. And what I want to emphasize is, to be entrepreneurial is not a silver bullet. It's just one of the many, many skills that one needs to have. And then, and another point on that is that I think back in the 80s and 90s, where there was a lot more funding from both the government and also the dot-com boom generation. So an entrepreneurial endeavor would be that $300 million museum that I was talking about. But I think going forward right now in the 21st century, in this decade, I think that is going to be rare and far between. So I think one needs to be entrepreneurial within a much tighter constrained situation. And in fact, in research, we find that one becomes the most creative when you have to work within a very constrained environment. So I think that is a message probably we did not get to, but I think it's a very important thing for the 21st century.
And that's very important, because the lesson that the for-profit business has learned is you should starve the venture, meaning don't give them too many resources. Make sure that those resources are limited at the proper stage so that people don't get a sense of entitlement or a sense of the ability to try too many things. You got to focus their mind. And that's why funding exercises are so difficult, because people don't give you big money. They make sure that the progress by which they give you money correspond to deliverable, correspond to things you can prove. And that's a good discipline.
So it's somewhere in between just survival, but not being the fat cat that is our focus or lazy or something something like that. Is that what you're talking about?
Somewhat, but it's deeper. Forget the word fat cat because it's too emotional. But it's more you're more creative if you don't have extraordinary resources. Okay? And you find that some of the better creation comes from people that have to think outside of the normal patterns based on the fact that they don't have the resources to spend within the normal patterns. And that's something that has been studied, that's something that has a lot of psychological element behind it, proven element, where living with constraint makes you more creative.
Right. And I think the best example that business school used is Apollo 13, when they lost power and that was a totally constrained environment. And the astronauts, and then back in Cape Canaveral, they had to figure out how to get those astronauts back on Earth safely. And you cannot get any resources because that module...
Because they are lost behind the moon.
That's right. So that is a real illustration of creativity and entrepreneurial thinking.
Within constraint.
With no, total constraint.
Do you think these skills are teachable? Are they inherent? Does it matter?
It's teachable in the sense that there are processes that you can use to become better at it, but that will not take away the talent of the person that has the innate talent to do it. So it's a balancing act.
That's right.
But the techniques exist, and the techniques reinforce, add, amplify the innate creativity of people.
There are a lot of known techniques. How do you help yourself to think in an entrepreneurial way, as well as a lot of it is process. So it's like learning to play the piano. Everybody can play the piano, only few can become concert pianists, right? So there's the levels of that. And then, the handout I gave out, and that was another self-administered test to see, where your talents lie and where you need to bone up. So that is sort of, it's both the innate and acquired skills.
If you step back on what we heard, you get a lot of interesting anecdotes about what people have done, but the common thread around those anecdotes is their ability to transcend some of their fundamental constraints, experiment something, and then exploit when there's some success. And that success obviously helped them bring attendance or helped them bring some more money to their coffer. But it's the willingness to go and change a little bit the perspective of themselves, of their board, of the people looking at them, and creating new things. And to me, that was very exciting.
Right. Very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it was exciting, because you see, again, with minimal resources, a lot of constraint, people doing things that, draw your attention.
Yeah, one of the things very often when I talk to people and I tell them that I'm a consultant in a non-profit environment, and in the for-profit environment very often I get kind of like a little you're not good enough to make it in the for-profit, but I'm all grown up, I'm not offended. But what I tell them, and I really have a very, very strong belief, is that I am infinitely admirative of people working in a non-profit environment such as museums, is that they are able, what we saw, do so much with so little. If the for-profit can learn from them, it would be terrific. So I really admire this, as you saw, Patrick, as you saw, people are motivated, dedicated, and they are not here to become rich. They are driven by a passion. They believe in what they're doing. And I think that is what really is the strength of these museum people in the NEMA family.